Cool. Hi there. Um, Hello and welcome to the Wayward Strand stream as part of LudoNarraCon 2020. Um,
Woo!
Wayward Strand is the heartfelt narrative game that we're making, which is about Casey, a teenage girl who explores an airborne hospital for the first time, uncovering its mysteries and exploring the lives of the patients and staff on board. Um, I'll introduce myself first. My name is Jason Becker. My pronouns are he, him, and I do a bunch of stuff on Wayward Strand, including like production and writing and programming and design. I've got a couple of other awesome team members with me on the stream. Go ahead and introduce yourselves.
My name's Maize, my pronouns are they, them, and I do audio on Wayward Strand.
My name's Aspen. My pronouns are she, they, and I'm a technical artist and a 3D artist on Wayward Strand.
Cool. So for starters, I'd love to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that each of us are on and whichever land that you might be on. I pay my deep respects to elders of these lands, communities, past, present, and future. Wayward Strand was made on the lands of the Wurundjeri and Bunurong people of the Kulin Nation and is set on Bunurong country. And we work in collaboration with the Bunurong Land Council. Sovereignty was never ceded. These lands always were and always will be Aboriginal land. Our team believes that we must engage in truth telling so that we can join Australia's history with the more than 60,000 years of history that was here before us, so that we can move together united. Cool. Um, LudoNarraCon was organized by Fellow Traveler in partnership with the Steam team, and we want to give them a big thanks for hosting Wayward Strand for LudoNarraCon 2020. It's a really great event, and we are really happy to be taking part and chatting about Wayward Strand and all things narrative games. Um, so there's a demo version of Wayward Strand available throughout this week to download through Steam, along with a lot of other demos for some amazing games. And then for games that are already released, there are sales. There's a bunch of other streaming and panels to dive into. Um, for Wayward Strand in particular, we're most active probably on our Twitter, if you wanted to follow that to keep up with development. And also, we've got a Discord, which there's a link to on our Steam page to chat with us and also other people who are interested about the game. Um, and throughout LudoNarraCon on the streams, our team are going to be jumping in every now and then to be on there to chat and answer questions. So we hope to see you there. The demo that we're showing at LudoNarraCon is a work in progress version of the game. It's a great way to get some context on what Wayward Strand is, though, of course, on the stream, we'll be diving into it a lot as well. Especially some of the development and behind the scenes stuff that you don't necessarily get just from playing the demo. Um, so if what you see is interesting, we'd love for you to add us to your Steam wish list and follow us on different all the various social media things, which is really helpful for us and also just a great way for you to keep up to date with what's going on with development. Um, yeah. So for this stream in particular, we are doing like a deep dive into Wayward Strand's real-time storytelling uh, uh, design. Basically, going into both like the tech side of it and then also some of the design stuff as well, because it's a pretty unique design and it's been challenging for us to kind of and quite experimental. So we've it's kind of evolved over the years, and I'm excited to tell you a bit about it. Um, and yeah, Maze and Aspen are going to be here to kind of share their perspective and also um, ask questions and kind of let me know if I've gone down a tech rabbit hole that is going to be very confusing or not interesting to people. Um,
Everything is
yeah.
interesting. All of your work is brilliant, Jason.
Well, yeah, it's exciting, and obviously this is a team effort. All of this stuff it kind of has come together. A lot of the tech stuff is a mix of a lot of the real time story tech stuff. Russell, the lead programmer on Wayward Strand, has had a huge part in as well. Yeah. So what we're looking at right here is the thing is one of the key tools that we've made. But before I really explain it, I'll try to just go into how Wayward Strand's story works. Um, so uh, yeah, because otherwise it will not make much sense. um, so Wayward Strand, yeah, I kind of gave a little bit of like an intro of what it's about. But basically, there are all of these characters that are on board the airship, and they're all in different rooms. This is like a screenshot from a little while ago. Um, but they're all in their different rooms doing their different things or like walking around, and they each basically have a timeline that is independent of Casey, the player character. So all of their stories move forward regardless of what Casey is doing, which is quite different for a game because in most games, you the story moves forward kind of linked into what the player is doing and how the player is acting.
The
And there's
story
often a
only
lot of
progresses when the player is there and active
yeah,
doing something.
yeah, exactly. And there's sometimes, there's often quite a lot of like clever kind of trickery around trying to make you feel like, ah, this only just happened, in
I just
terms of the
stumbled into
story's
this.
time.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, but what, you could have stumbled into it. It's that classic thing of like how in Uncharted, everything's shaking and it's like, oh, there's like an avalanche, run. But you can actually take infinite time to run around the level and make sure that you've collected every single little artifact. And then you can leave the level or go into the zone that triggers the actual
Yeah.
avalanche or whatever it is.
And
Um,
Zelda, you could do these 126 small puzzles, or you could save
yeah,
the world now.
exactly. Yeah, and it's just something that like it's fine. It's not the end of the world that these things exist, but I think because of that stuff, I and the team have just been really curious about like, well, what if you made a game and that wasn't the case? What if you made a game and where you just showed up somewhere and the important event for this particular storyline had kind of already happened, and you just weren't there and you didn't see that, but you were somebody else somewhere else and you saw another thing.
Mm.
And it would probably be a lot more like real life, where sometimes you're not there for an important part of the story, but you can kind of discover what that like what happened by kind of chatting to people about it afterwards or seeing the ramifications of that thing play out. Um, and then I guess, yeah, as we developed it as well, we kind of realized that it's also um, it's also just a really unique storytelling. Um, it has a lot of really unique storytelling opportunities because in a film, say, you kind of every moment in a film is kind of decided by the director or the team that are making it every second, actually, and even every like millisecond, really, because when a cut happens can have a huge effect on the tone of a particular moment and a particular scene. Um, but in Wayward Strand, you can just follow somebody around for the entire game and see every single thing that they do, and a bunch of stuff that they're going to do isn't really going to be like this important pivotal story moment in their
Mm.
life. It might just be them mopping the floor, or it might be them like uh, just hanging out in their room a bit bored. They didn't have anything to do, and but then it's cool because you can go in there and you can chat to them, you can keep them company. Um, it's so it's this weird mix of like we're definitely not like trying to present this as like this is a realism simulator or whatever, because uh, you know because we're it's fiction and we're telling stories, and these are all kind of creative decisions. But there's this interesting like there are these interesting elements of how actual real life works that we're trying to bring in to this thing, and I think that is part of what makes it quite different as you're playing to a lot of other games.
Yeah, I
And
think it
yeah,
seems like there's like we're putting effort into really emphasizing who the characters are and how they would act even in mundane situations. Like
Mm.
we're we're authoring all of the moments in someone's day-to-day life rather than just the pivotal moments that movies or other games usually focus on.
yeah, yeah, 100%. Yeah. Um, Yeah, yeah, and it's exciting. It's been an exciting kind of journey and experience. And yeah, I'll talk a bit about, I guess, the some of the tech behind it, and kind of how that's evolved.
Because there's definitely some problems that come along with this style of telling
Yeah,
narrative, right? There's a
yeah,
reason that
totally.
QuickTime narrative events are such a staple in video games.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and there's also like um yeah, there was a real kind of danger, I think, in something like this where you have an active player character and also all of these simultaneous stories that are moving forward of just every like Casey kind of making a decision early and then everything branching out into like a billion different branches by the end of the game that we would have to author. So a lot of the decisions that I'll be talking about will be kind of coming from this place of um, let's use the limitation that we kind of can't really do um, make this thing branch out into a billion different branches, even though we do some branching, to try to like let's use that limitation, but kind of turn it from a weakness into a strength. Like let's explore what that allows us to do.
Yeah,
Um,
and I mean, creativity always thrives under limitations, right?
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Um, So I'll kind of show one of the main tools that we've really made to try to tell these stories. And this is so this is a tool that we call the Wayward Scripter, which is just a pretty not the most descriptive name, because we do also have scripts and things as well. Whereas
Programming
this is
scripts and writing scripts.
exactly, yeah. So
Yeah.
there's so many different scripts, and this thing is more of like a scheduler really than a
Yeah,
scripter.
it looks like my university schedule or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Um, so but basically what it is for every character that's in the game, it is their schedule throughout the day or a particular section of the day. So Wayward Strand takes place over 3 days, and this is the schedule of the demo. So basically,
Mm.
the the demo kind of goes from Well, it goes from roughly 9 a.m. on the first day until it actually finishes up about here-ish. So there's some stuff that maybe I won't show that
Some
stuff.
super
Ooh.
secret
Yeah, some
content.
super secret content. Um,
I see you, buddy in bed, buddy sitting.
yeah,
Whoa.
yes, yes. So,
Uh, Jason, is this just a visual scheduler for you, or does this link into Unity and the game somehow?
it does link into Unity. Yes, I'll just very quickly. So basically, I mean, you can probably see that along the top here, there's time. So yeah, 9:15, 9:30. So this is when things happen, and then these are each of the characters. So this is what happens throughout Heinrich's day, for instance. And I'll just quickly with what Maze said, there's kind of these two different colors. They're a little bit hard to see, but some of these blocks of time for a character are more of this orangey color, and then others are more yellow. The orangey color things are
You can
called
tell this
activity.
program hasn't had an art path.
Exactly. Yeah. Very
Gosh,
program
Aspen. Whoa,
art.
shade
I'm I'm
thrown.
I'm impressed at the color coding, but could do with a
Yeah,
little extra pizzazz.
it definitely could. Yeah.
Yeah,
Maybe I'll get your help on that in the
sure.
near. um, Yeah, so there are activities which are kind of these moments where a character is in a particular spot and they can be interacted with, and certain dynamic things can happen, but there's not a scheduled conversation that's going to happen at that time, or a scheduled kind of special thing that's going on.
So it's
And then the
like
So
yellow.
in a way,
idle.
we're kind of mixing QuickTime and like player-driven narrative moments that can happen within a
Yeah,
certain window, and then
yeah,
scheduled moments that happen at a specific time.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and so say for Heinrich, for instance, at 10 uh 10 o'clock in the morning, 10:47 seconds, Joe will come and pick up Heinrich from the cafeteria in a scene, and then yeah, in these specific scenes, certain yeah, it's usually when two characters that aren't Casey are interacting with each other, or more potentially, and kind of playing out a scene that Casey can listen in on. Um, and Casey can also um, be included in those scenes sometimes as well.
So if she's
Um,
already there, like the player's already there as Casey, and then Joe picks up Heinrich,
yeah.
it interrupts, right?
Uh, it used to,
Ah,
and now I think most of the time Joe will wait for you to finish up what you're currently discussing with Heinrich before he comes and interrupts you. That's actually I think I'll cover that in a little bit, because
mm.
that was a pretty key kind of decision change at one point, because at one point we were uh very focused on everything is happening kind of regardless of you as the player. So if this is going to happen at 10:47, it's just going to interrupt whatever you were doing with Heinrich.
Ruthless.
Yeah, but then as we were playing demos and stuff, we kind of realized that we weren't really seeing benefits from that in actual play, it even though there's this kind of theoretical benefit to it, or it works with our design pillars. um, it just is a lot better of an experience for the player, for them to actually get to finish their conversations a lot of the time.
Yeah, and I mean, realistically, I mean, Joe is a little bit brash, but he would
Yeah,
probably like let you finish your sentence, maybe.
yeah, exactly. There's really so many situations where somebody would actually wait and let you finish, especially because a lot of the scenes that Casey has with a character are kind of designed to not be very long uninterrupted sequences. They're more what we refer to kind of in the code as hangouts, where you're with somebody and you can start off like little questions or conversations, and then those will peter off and you'll be hanging out with them again, but then you can start off another bit of conversation, or maybe that character will ask you a question, or that kind of thing as well, which is another thing that I just really love.
Mm.
So to answer your question from before, Aspen, this links into Unity, and it also links into the Ink scripting engine. So if you've played something like 80 Days or Heaven's Vault, or I think Neocab, like there's actually a bunch of different games that use Inkle's Ink scripting language, which is kind of just like a narrative, uh, yeah, a narrative game scripting thing that I'll just jump into and
Yeah, do you
show
have an
you.
example of what that looks like?
Yeah, I certainly
Inky.
do. So yeah, basically each of these scenes, I can right click it and do open ink story, and we can look at the story for a particular scene in ink script. So these work quite similar in a way to a like a TV or film script, basically. Especially for us, because we have like in our design, we take a lot of inspiration and stuff from theater, and our main writer Georgia Simmons is comes from the theater world, so I think that also really influenced the way that these are written. Um, but yeah, these are basically.
You want to just zoom in a bit, Jason?
Oh
So you
yes, certainly,
can-
yes, I can. To do zoom controls.
Oh no.
Where's that zoom it thing? Hey, Maze,
Yep.
do you remember the keys for for how to zoom in on this thing?
Nope.
All right. Hey,
Oh, there
this
we go.
thing,
That looks good.
I got it.
Smooth
Sweet.
Yeah,
as.
cool. Okay, that worked. So, yeah, this is it's a little bit pixelated now, but hopefully that's a little bit more readable. So yeah, it's kind of the
Russian
scene
spy tech.
sequentially laid out. Oh yeah, and something that's just happened previously in the story is that Heinrich had the newspaper read to him by Ted, one of the other characters, and so and Joe kind of knows that this happens every morning. So Joe is asking Heinrich about whether there was anything interesting in the newspaper. Um, yeah, and there's basically dialogue lines, which are the lines that start with Joe or with Heinrich or whatever. But we and for instance,
Yeah, what are the green
these
bits like? Is in room.
yeah
What does that mean?
yeah these little green bits are basically little logic checks to see if Casey is nearby, um, yeah, or is in the particular room. So that one where Joe says it's time to get back to your room, he'll only say that if Casey is in the space where Heinrich is. So if Casey was hanging out with Heinrich, then Joe will be a bit more explicit about what's going on. Whereas if Casey isn't with Heinrich, then it's a lot more of just like a normal everyday interaction where Joe is just like, all right, ready to go. Like we kind of know what's happening here.
I don't know whether we already mentioned this, but Casey can sort of like be actively in conversations and also sort of eavesdrop on conversations from outside the scene.
Yes.
So like rather than this just never being seen because Casey the player isn't there, she can sort of eavesdrop and hear things from other parts of the ship as she goes about her business.
Exactly. So. Yeah, and that's actually something that we sometimes do get caught up on, that question of like, wait a second, if Casey isn't here, where can Casey be so that she can overhear this? And yeah, most of the time it is like, oh yeah, Casey could be overhearing this because Casey could have been here, or like
in the
this,
room next door or
yeah, in the
something.
room next door. Yeah, but there have been a couple of times, especially early on, where I think I was writing some scenes, and then Russell was telling me, "Wait a second, all of that stuff happens before Casey boards the ship. So why are you like writing all of these scenes?" And I think I was even directing, like I was going into Unity and like getting the people to be moving around to the right places and stuff. I think I was just getting too excited about the whole real time narrative thing. Um,
It's very much um, an alive game. That
Yeah.
everything could happen without
totally.
Casey.
Yeah,
In
yeah,
fact,
and that's
some of
yeah,
it does.
exactly. And that's like that was it, right at the start. That was very much that kind of like, let's see how far we can push this idea. And I think that's a little bit of where that was coming from. Like, what if there are things that even actually happen, and you could, if you could get a debug camera, you could take it and go look at it, but that's not for the player at all. Um, we do still have
Sneaky.
some things like that, but we don't actually strip them out and animate them and everything. There are
That's
moments
true.
where
Yeah.
people go somewhere and you're, you know, the door is locked and you're not able to find out what happens at that particular moment in that particular character's story.
And it's
But
also
from what I can, sorry, Maze, go.
we also have an idea of what happened in the morning and in the evenings. Like Casey's just there during the day. Their lives don't stop
Yeah.
in the evenings. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. What I was going to say was that like the narrative is definitely being written for the ship and the ship's inhabitants, and Casey, the player, is just sort of there and experiencing it. So it's not written in. I mean, from what I can tell, it's not written in such a way that everything is in service of what the player will learn from this conversation. It's sort of like naturally flowing through what all of these interactions would have and how their interactions would impact each other, and then Casey is just sort of sometimes there and sometimes not.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So how deep do some of these like if else Casey in the room sort of stuff
Ooh,
go? Like,
good question. Yeah, because this one was quite simple. It's basically there's just a couple of little things that check if she's in the room or not. I might quickly have a look at some of the new stuff that we've been working on. Because we've one of the things that we've done recently is kind of changed around um, the structure of how the Hangouts work a little bit. So I think Ida's
and that was after some play testing, right? Of
yeah, where we kind of had realized that some of our scenes go a little bit too long without there being a way for Casey to have some kind of interaction in some way.
An agency.
Yeah, yeah.
Which sometimes makes sense because she's 14 and there's these oldies talking to each other, and sometimes there just isn't much place to interject because you don't really understand much of what's going on.
Yeah, totally. So
yeah, this one looks
for
more intense.
yeah, this one's quite a bit more intense. So this is something where so if you're hanging out with Ida in Ida's room, one of the things that Casey is quite interested about at the start of the game is the airship itself and the history of the airship, because Casey is an amateur journalist for her school newspaper, and she is really curious about the airship itself, and she's never been able to go up there. So now that she's going up there, even though her mom has asked her to, you know, go hang out with the patients, spend time with them, Casey is a little bit secretly like, ooh, I'm going to get a great article out of this. I'm going to find out the mysteries of the ship. And so this is actually, Casey has already asked about the airship to Ida, and this is one of those scenes that is kind of designed for Ida herself to instigate it. So if you're hanging out in Ida's room, you actually just have to be sitting there for a little bit and have asked that question, and then Ida will go, "Oh, I thought of somebody who you could ask more about the airship." So yeah, this is just a little bit of how ink works. Like if you use ink for any game, you're probably going to be doing this stuff. So at line say 266, there are those asterisks that kind of those basically denote different options that Casey can choose with it at that particular point in the conversation. So when Ida asks, "You took the shuttle up this morning, yes?" Casey can either say, "Yeah," or "Why?" or "The shuttle," and then Ida clarifies that. And then eventually what that minus does on line 274, which is about partway down the screen, about halfway down the screen, that kind of collects the flow back to the central point of Ida's conversation. And that's that's one of the features of ink that I think we really love as designers and writers, because this really works with the flow, like with our design thinking of, we want our characters to be our non-player characters to be able to drive conversation as much as the player character. So because of their system of options, and then those are called, I think, gathers, these things that kind of gather the story back to a central flow, we use those all the time, because our characters that aren't Casey, when they're in conversation with Casey, are going to have their own bits of information that they're trying to get across to Casey, and their own drive of the story. And so
and this way we don't have loose ends hanging on, where you end up having to write out, if these 5 things happened and these 5 things happened and these 5 things happened, then this happened. And that just becomes a snowballing problem.
I also feel like oldies do that a lot, where they're just gonna say what they want to say, regardless of what you're gonna say.
Exactly. They're just like, exactly.
Talking over you.
Yeah. And in some of the scenes, like in terms of the writing, we've even played around with the concept. It feels a little bit dangerous because people might think it's a bug, but we've played around with the concept of a character kind of, you trying to say something or trying to ask a question, and then the character will just keep going with what they're saying, to kind of, because they're that type of they're just very focused on what they're trying to get across, and what you're asking doesn't really register too much for them right at that moment.
Is there anything you've tried to write, Jason, that ink doesn't allow or doesn't sort of support well? Have any concessions been made to the story to fit the software we've got?
It's very flexible, which is really nice, because with these things, I might actually, I don't know if I can actually type when it's zoomed in. All right, I'll just quickly do a little bit of typing.
Like you can asterisks.
Yeah, you can nest things, and kind of optionally, just keep going deeper and deeper into a particular line of conversation if you want to. So what I've done here is, off this first option, it's very easy to start going like, oh, well, what if that little bit of thread of conversation goes longer and has a follow-on? But because in ink, this is how you do it, it will still always naturally gather back to the minus online, which is on now line 276.
Yeah, right. I was going to ask, like, oh, so it just comes back again. And then
yeah,
have you had to do anything in the UI stuff of Unity to like help it, or does anything change on the Unity side?
It's yeah, ink is awesome because basically
this is now an ink ad thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone use it.
Well, it's a
Yeah, it
narrative
is really
conference.
good.
I think it's all right.
Yeah. So basically on the Unity side, and I can actually swap across to Unity.
Yeah, could you actually like run us from ink through to how does that get to the scheduler, and then how does that get into Unity?
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, it's a little bit tricky because it actually does go through Unity to get to the scheduler, and then it kind of goes back.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll quickly go through that, and then I'll go into kind of how awesome ink is in Unity. Remind me if I forget to. So yeah, so the way that the way that we use ink, and we do kind of customize it a little bit, and that's another awesome thing about ink, that it's very customizable, is that we take these scenes that are written in ink, which is, and this is kind of just like a text editor, we bring them into Unity's icon changed. Yes, we bring them into Unity. This is our like Unity scene, and this is kind of a bit of our setup. And basically, we process the ink files, and for each ink file, we generate a bunch of information. Like we generate which character is involved, which we pull out of that line of text. We do some quick.
And this is your work now, like ghost
work? Yeah. This is going into the way that we've kind of integrated ink into Wayward Strand, and kind of customized it to suit our own, to suit what we need for Wayward Strand. We pre-process each of the lines and put an initial value of roughly how long we think that line will take, kind of based on the amount of words that are in that line. And we build up kind of a representation and a Unity side representation of that scene, where we're able to estimate how long it's going to take. And we have to have a minimum estimation and a maximum estimation because of the different options that Casey can choose within a particular scene.
Yeah, we've got to have some buffer on everything, essentially.
Yeah. Because there might be a scene where Casey, where somebody asks Casey a question, and Casey just very quickly answers the question, and then that scene is over, and that might make that scene 20 seconds long. Or we might have, or that scene, if Casey doesn't answer the question or asks her own question, that scene might take 3 minutes to play through. So we kind of, we basically go through a particular scene, find, pre-process it, figure out how long each line is going to take, and then also...
Wait, how do you figure how long each line is going to take? Because we have a lot of voiceover. And, like, we've gone through a few recording sessions of the VO, but at the moment we have about half of the VO implemented, and the other half is silent but still has like pretty nice timing.
That's just a pure mathematical guesstimation, basically. So for each line, it's not even the amount of words in each line, it's the amount of characters on that line. So if a line has 100 characters, I think it gets multiplied by, it's like point,
some magic number.
Yeah, some magic number character per line or something. It's some magic number that just gives us an estimate of like, maybe this line where Casey says, oh yeah, I think that's right, will take about 3 seconds. And because we've massaged that magic number over time, it does actually work fairly well for timing, which is cool. But we do sometimes have to override it, and I'll show you how that works in a sec. The yeah, so we have to go through each scene when we pre-process it, and basically do a simulated playthrough, choosing every possible different combination of options to figure out the shortest and longest time that it can take. We do that in Unity, and then that data comes across to the scheduler, which is there. So, and then that's how these scenes are. We figure out that this scene is going to go from 9:51 to 11:13. But that also, I'll zoom in for this. That also is what some of these extra boxes mean, because there's it's a little bit hard to see, but there's the yellow box which goes longer than the black box. The black box there is
that is very hard to see, but
yeah, sorry. So for 09 Neil the Author 01, the black box is the shortest amount of time that that scene can be. The yellow box is the longest amount of time that that scene can be.
And the yellow box ends where the green bar starts.
The yellow box ends where the next green bar starts.
And the one above that is the same. Margot's decision in the text is going on the yellow box too.
Yeah, exactly. And each of those is going to be different for each scene, because some scenes might vary a lot if Casey is there or isn't there, or says a certain thing, or responds quickly or slowly.
Have you had to rewrite certain dialogue to make the time it takes on average smaller or larger?
There's definitely been scenes where we've gone, oh, maybe all of this stuff happens if Casey is there and none of it happens if she isn't there. And we've realized that, well, maybe it makes sense to take some of that stuff and move it to one of those hangout kind of scenes, so that the schedule of that character isn't as impacted.
Significantly
yeah, exactly. And that's also what these numbers that are in the bottom left of the box, that thing says 9:51:36 to 11:13:09, but the number in italics in brackets 11:08, that's the shortest time there. So it could go to 11:13, longest time, or to 11:08, the shortest time. And and then
so we've got the ink file that goes and gets processed in Unity and then gets fed into this scheduler. And then what does this scheduler actually do?
Yes, so what we actually use this scheduler to do is to add new scenes or to move scenes around to change when they start.
That's
so we can do that without having to then edit the ink file again.
Exactly. Yeah. So the ink file kind of is independent of the time that it starts, and then we play around in this tool to like move things around and be like, and what these what this like things that turning red and green and stuff mean are, the scheduler knows how long it's going to take for Joe to get from where he is for this scene to where he is for this scene, and
like
if we make those really ship. Close, physically on the ship.
Cool.
And if we make those close together, it means that it's turning red because Joe is going to have to run to get from the end of that previous scene to the start of the next scene.
Running's fine, right?
Well, sometimes it is fine. Sometimes you do want them to be able to do that, but sometimes obviously that's an issue, or especially as I've played around with these scenes, once that scene ends after the next activity is is scheduled.
Yeah.
So that's obviously an issue, and that's basically when this tool kind of starts out, it's all a bit of a mess, and we have to kind of go in, move things around. Sometimes here we actually do realize, this scene just takes way too long, and because this has to happen here, but this scene is way too long, so we have to go in and edit it and shorten it. Yeah, that's basically what this is used for.
So are you the only person who touches this part of it, Jason? Because Georgia, the main writer, what parts does she interact with?
Georgia mainly does interact with the scene files themselves. And I think that has been a really handy separation, because a lot of this scheduling that goes on it's such a it's so hectic, and there's so many things that you kind of need to just keep like be thinking about, in terms of like, well, how long can that be happening? What's this other character doing? What's going on there? That I think it's difficult for me sometimes to be connecting with how the characters are, like where the characters are emotionally, and who they are, and their personalities, as I'm like figuring out all of this stuff. So with Georgia kind of being able to be a lot more focused on really that the expressiveness of the characters, and then me to be bringing stuff into this tool and then going back and like chatting with Georgia, or doing some editing and tweaking things and moving things around. But
and
not
do we have any systems so that Georgia doesn't have to play the entire game and download a new build, such that she can, make sure her writing is good and correct and as she intended?
Yes, we do. That's I think it's not 100% finished yet, but there is a version of being able to play it in Unity where it's basically, instead of it being all 3D with you know where you have to be like playing through the entire thing to be able to see what happens in a particular scene. Russell's been working on, and has pretty close to finished, a version of it which is much more like a text adventure, where you can just click through scenes and choose things, instead of having to actually go around. Because if you wanted to be playing this scene 100 times and to figure out what's going on,
I have played this scene over 100 times.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's kind of unavoidable in a certain sense.
For
but
audios,
but if you're, especially if you're editing the wording of it, or the structure of the scene, that tool that is in progress is going to be super handy.
There's a pretty significant pipeline for our game, because we all have to be so aware of everything. And it being like, even on the side, we can see in the hierarchy that we have this many scenes open, because everything is happening at once. Everything does have to be open at once.
Exactly.
All the characters exist at once, and all passing around and doing their new things.
Even though we're in here, Ida's in there, and if I swap to the scene view right now, I was behind the ship. Sorry. Let's go to the front of the ship. People are walking around doing their things. Somebody's getting, I think, Heinrich's over there. He's about to get collected by Joe, Joe is just starting to walk over now to do that. Collecting Heinrich that we talked about. But what all the player is seeing is what's going on here right now. But we basically need all of that other stuff to be happening, because I don't think the button is coming up right now, which is maybe a bug. But because Casey can leave, here we go. No, it's not a bug. It's because Neil was talking to Casey.
Ship it
as intended. yeah, because Casey at any time can leave a particular room, go somewhere else, and be seeing what's going on here and talking to people in different places. And um, yeah. So there's yeah. I'll just we're getting pretty close on time probably, and I can kind of go on about this stuff forever. Um, but I might just show one other thing, which, especially I guess if you know about game development, it's kind of a bit of a missing piece of the puzzle in what we've talked about. And that's like, in a particular scene, you're kind of seeing characters um, moving around and walking and kind of doing different actions and stuff. Oh yeah, this is Casey peeking into a scene if she's not actually in the room to be able to see what's going on. Um, but then, what's driving that? How do we get Neil to walk over to the chair at that particular time in the scene and play animations and stuff? The way that works is that we've got a this thing here called the Scene Timeline Helper, another name that probably isn't the most helpful.
What do you
Lucky
mean?
you're the only one who has to use it. So.
Well, yeah, right now.
Although I'm thinking
to be roping some other people into that as well, maybe soon, Aspen.
I think, this is at least. This is what I was using to implement the voiceover as well.
Yeah. Maize was using this, for sure, because the voiceover comes through this as well. So we develop a what we've created, and this is something that is pretty well our own fully custom tool, where as I was talking about with processing those ink lines, as we process them, we generate a timeline. A timeline is like a Unity specific kind of sequencing tool, and we generate one of those for every single line in the entire game. And what this sequencing tool allows us to do is to be able to set somebody's location. So this is a clip where we get Neil to go from his seat to go over and look out the window. And so there's all of this kind of information in here that's been set up by somebody, probably me, to get Neil to go and do that. But this is just a thing that can be like moved around. Oh, yeah, you can actually see what if it doesn't exist, then Neil doesn't go over and do it. And it can happen further or earlier in time. This is what triggers the dialogue, and these things originally get automatically generated. But then once they're generated, they can be moved around, they can be shortened or lengthened. We can have the subtitle come up a little bit before the dialogue or a little bit after the dialogue. And this line has a bunch of stuff going on. I might have messed it up a bit, moving all those things around. No, it's looking like it's working. And so with this tool, it swaps to each timeline as it as the scene moves forward, so that you can be editing the line. And for instance, this is, as Maize was saying, this is one of the scenes that does have a dialogue, like voiceover there. So we've, there's a bunch of work that's gone into this. For instance, a little button where you can click this. Pretty sure this works. Yeah, and then it makes the length of this clip, which previously would have been automatically kind of guessed at for how long it should go. It makes the length of that clip match exactly the length of the dialogue audio file. So that's a way for us to kind of go through the scene after the voiceover has been implemented and make sure that the dialogue lines are exactly how long we want them to be.
And also just general like direction of the pacing, whether someone hesitates or those sorts of things. So it's actually like a few passes at this. So there's like the ink files, the actual words, the scheduler when it happens, and then here using the timeline tools and all of this custom tools for the individual pieces of timing.
Yeah. This is kind of like all of the directing work that you would do after someone writes a script, is like putting the actors in place and telling them where to stand and when to pause and when to do all of that.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and we kind of call this process often scene direction. And yeah, it's something that this tool also, like, I guess, evolved over time, because when we originally were directing scenes back in 2016, this whole timeline tool didn't exist yet. Unity hadn't released it. So back then, I think me and Russell made a version of it that was entirely custom, that was a lot harder to use, but it worked, and that's what the original vertical.
It was a beta version, an alpha version.
Exactly. And then once Unity came out with this timeline thing, we were like, do we keep with our existing tool, or do we basically rewrite it to work with the timeline stuff? And we thought it would make sense to rewrite it to work with that. And so that's just an example of this thing having gone through a lot of iterations. And yeah,
just like Wayward Strand, the game, the tool set is like a living, breathing operation that's constantly moving and changing.
Yes, 100%. Yeah. So I think that's pretty well how it all ties together. A pretty like kind of overview look at it, and this is a particular snapshot in time of actually in our Git. I went back in time a little bit to a time when the time that links up to when we made the demo to be showing all of this stuff, because we have already changed a bunch of these systems and changed the way that the
more work has been done.
More things for us to
but none of it's going to waste.
Yep.
Yes, exactly. It's all improving the experience that people are going to have, and also improving our qualities of life as the people making it. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Jason. That was awesome.
Yeah.
I think also for Aspen and I to see all of this process as well, and how you view it, because I think, like, personally, we just duck into small different bits of it. All of our different roles overlap in interesting ways. So to see
there's a Venn diagram, but yeah,
totally.
I'll just do a little wrap up and let the viewers know of other things that they can tune into. So we have a couple of upcoming interviews, one with consultant nurse Liz Bartlett, who was nursing in the 1970s, as well as a deep dive into some of our characters. We'll get more of the team on for those. And a special segment with special guest Jen Frank, who'll be interviewing us about the project's guts, all emotional and political. And again, we'll all be online on Stream Chat and on socials, on Discord and on Twitter.
What can we do if we're interested in Wayward Strand?
Download the demo. It'll be up for a week, and wishlist us on Steam. That'll help make sure that Wayward is up for longer. And come on our Discord. There's a link on the Steam page and on Twitter at Wayward Strand.
And in terms of the stuff that was in this segment, I'm always happy to talk at length about how all these systems work. So if anybody had any questions about it, definitely feel free to jump on and see if you can catch me on the stream chat or Russell as well, or on Discord or anything. Just happy to
or tweet at Wayward Strand.
About this stuff.
We'll
Totally.
Get it through to you.
We're all very open.
Sure. Yeah, definitely.
All right. Thanks so much.
Cool.
Yeah, thanks heaps.